Hello, everyone, and welcome back after a long hiatus to NetrunnerQuest. I am your host, Code Marvelous, and today I am joined by a new challenger, Sanjay.
It's me. Hi, everybody. This is my debut on NetrunnerQuest, and I am thrilled about it.
We also have returning quester, Thomas, otherwise
Always
known as
questing.
Confus.
Always questing. Never getting to the mountaintop.
Bullshit.
Okay,
We're
I've
gonna talk about that.
Yes, I've got to like Mount Washington. I haven't gotten to Everest yet. How's that?
Yeah, well, that's fine. We'll
Oh,
talk.
can we cuss on NetrunnerQuest? This is great. The FCC isn't gonna bust down our door.
Yeah, NBN isn't gonna come in. And then currently experiencing technical difficulties, and we'll returning next week. We have Laura, otherwise known as Oslet, who cannot be with us. She got hacked, so she is not with us today.
Speaking of technical difficulties, the stream is not showing video. It's only showing voices.
I'm seeing video.
Okay. Well, somebody said I hear voices. I must be behind.
All right. So, Dan, can I ask you a question? What is NetrunnerQuest?
Well, NetrunnerQuest
in this brave new format
is a podcast / live stream that's all about getting better at this incredibly difficult game we all play. Right? Netrunner is not a game that is ruled largely by RNG or by, vagaries. So careful practice play in a very real sense is something that takes a lot of work in Netrunner, and anyone who's experienced any kind of high-level tournament success will tell you the same. So NetrunnerQuest is all about us here in the Ghost Branch chat and some of our close friends coming on and talking about the careful ways that we try to get better and speaking to the best about how to be better when it comes to playing this game that we all love.
Yeah, and thank you for that beautiful answer. I would say that. So I've only experienced NetrunnerQuest thus far as a fan. I think if the concept of NetrunnerQuest appeals to you, you should definitely check out some of the earlier episodes. You all put together a very nice show, and I'm really excited for it to be back and to help with my presence and logistical support. Because I think listening to NetrunnerQuest makes me better at Netrunner, which is kind of fun, and I think it's pretty entertaining. I think especially the episode with Dan D'Argenio was really good. What was the episode about forks? That was also really good.
That was Dean Tran.
Yeah, the Dean Tran episode was really good. They're all really good. I think they're worth doubling back on.
Well, this is going to go on the SoundCloud, so it'll filter its way onto the iTunes as well.
Perfect.
So the audio for this will be making its way onto podcast format for people to listen to.
Yeah. And, yeah.
Maybe not as silky smooth as it was before. But.
So the plans for this show are to do it more often, probably once every 2 weeks, to do it live, and we're going to have a floating cast, including myself, Thomas, Sanjay, Laura, and also Kevin Tame from the DC area, and our old quester, Alan, so that we can do a floating cast of whoever is available, plus guests, potentially, same as before, to talk about topics, so we can bring you that sweet, sweet, nougaty content that you crave without it being like a month in between episodes and without trying to always schedule the same, 5 people, which made scheduling the show almost impossible.
Yeah, that was the downfall of us the first time around, I believe.
Yeah, so we're still going to try to keep more or less to the same concise one hour and change format that we were on before. And we're really going to stay focused. So with that in mind, let's go back to the old format. So let's start with where we are now and briefly talking about some of our recent competitive achievements. Why don't we start with you, Sanjay?
Oh, sure. So I'm Sanjay. Right now, the biggest competitive thing coming up for me is the King of Subways tournament in 2 weeks from now. I'm on a team with Laura Oscillate and our friend Ian, and I'm on a friend team with my two co-hosts today. And King of Subways is an important tournament for me because I really want to do well, because I don't want to, I don't want to crash and burn and take everybody else down with me.
Yes.
Usually,
if someone has to crash and burn on the team, you want someone else to do it.
Exactly. So in terms of what I've done competitively, I think I've had a pretty middle of the road in terms of my tournament success. I think my best achievement was in last regional season. I was able to tweak what turned out to be a really strong runner deck out of Ayla with an Orvar combo deck before rotation, and it was a very strong deck, and I was able to pilot that to second place regional finish, which was incredibly good for me. And since then, store championship season has more or less finished, and I wasn't really focusing on my game during that point, and I kind of got into it with the. I went to tournaments with the understanding that I wouldn't do that well, and that more or less happened. I think I finished about with a 50-50 win percentage both times, both store championships. So that is sort of a brief understanding of my competitive situation.
Where would you like to go from here?
So I think it felt really good to tweak a strong deck, and Netrunner for me is a game where I really enjoy playing off the wall decks, and I really enjoy having fun with it. And I think some of that having fun is doing better than expected with off the wall decks, and I know that doing that requires work, and I would like to be motivated, time permitting, to put in the work to come up with some nice, strong off-the-wall decks.
Yeah, I think that's fair. So, Thomas, why don't you talk a little bit about you and your journey of great improvement since the last time we recorded?
I am demonstrably improved. So I have. It's a plaque over there. I'm not going to get up. I did. So I started off 2018 has been a great year so far. I'm still going to say that's true. So we had a very small GNK that, due to the size of it, we didn't have a cut, and I ended up tied for first at that one, and I was really pleased with that. And then I went to a store championship, and I got. It was second at the first store championship I went to, and I'm like, well, this is great. I've got a smoke mat. I'm doing great. I'm going to go to another store championship and have fun. And ended up winning that one somehow. It was an odd day, but that was right when Adam was at his best. I'm still playing a lot of Adam, which will probably come up later in this talk. So it was right when Emergent Creativity had come out and RNG Key, and he was just firing on all cylinders. It was a great day. Then we went to the charity tournament that you two fine gentlemen put on, and I came second to last. And it was fun, but yeah. But that one doesn't count. That's not an official FFG event. So I think I'm just going to ignore that one and keep the curve going up. And I think I have to win regionals next, if that's correct.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's fair. But
to be honest, I'm hoping for a good showing at regionals. If I can make the cut, I would really identify that as a success. I think anything better than my performance of last year, where I'm at least better than 50-50, I'd be really pleased with too.
No, that's bullshit. You're making the cut.
Yeah, I personally.
So we're gonna talk about this today because I think.
Oh, so Dan, what are your competitive accomplishments and competitive aspirations?
So I've had kind of a weird year. Worlds was bad. Really bad. I did the same thing that I did the last time I went in 2015, where I audibled off of a corp deck that I was very comfortable with at the very last minute. And that turned out to be a very bad idea, and I did very bad. Smoke only dropped a single game against Noah McKee. Shout out to Noah. And my corp did not pick up a single game.
Yeah, I'm with you on World's pain.
Yep. So I've had a pretty good store championship season. I obviously sat out for the charity tournament, but in store champs, I think I've top 4'd in at least 4 store championships, and I came in second, notably losing to Jonas, big unit in the largest one that we went to down in the DC area. But a big part of my competitive success recently is the topic of this episode of the quest, which is pet IDs and how spending a lot of time working on one ID can be both a hindrance and a help to your competitive performance, because I attribute a lot of my success this season to not being beholden to my pet IDs.
And I have the exact opposite problem.
Yep, so let's talk about that. So I think it's very briefly, I think we should go around and talk about what our pet IDs are, if we have one for each side, or if we don't, what our main ID is. I'll go first. I think it's safe to say that for basically since Noise was killed, my pet ID has been Smoke, basically since that time, and even a little bit before. I haven't really had a pet ID on Corp so much, but Smoke has been my runner that I've played, whether she's good or not, and that's led to some mixed success.
I would say you might not have a pet corp ID, but you do definitely have a pet corp faction. But I think you recognize
good now.
I think you recognize when they're good and when they're not, and you don't force yourself to play the Wayland.
Yeah, I don't force myself to play Wayland when they're bad.
Yeah, bringing up Wayland is pretty fair, because I think a lot of the stuff that we might say during this podcast, about pet IDs, could also apply to pet factions. If you wanted it to.
Yeah, so I could also say pet archetypes, because I will take an archetype and move it around from ID to ID to see where it fits best. Most notably, I'll hop in here. I've been on Adam and I've been on Asset Spam for a while, and when I went to the charity tournament, I tried Asset Spam out of ASA Group, which marginal success, could have been better in most anything else. But I've had a lot more success because I think, granted, it definitely helped that Adam got good there for a little while. I think he's on a slight downward trend at the moment, and Dan and I have talked about this, but right when Down the White Nile came out, Adam was fire, and just it was like, for that particular meta at that time, he was a great pick.
Yeah, I mean, and things come and go, which is something else that we'll talk about, because I did have success with Smoke, but we're not going to get derailed. Sunshine, talk to me a little bit about your pet IDs.
Yeah, so I am 2016 and 2017 World's top tenon. I was the only tenon player in 2016, and I finished, I think, 213th.
Is the secret within that nobody else plays tenon?
It's actually very popular now, and I think it's always been a beloved ID, but it was, I think, in recent Jin Techie stats, not the most recent one, but it was like the 4th or 5th most played ID. People really like tenon. So I think as Corp, I really adore that ID, and I play it a lot. And I think on runner side, I have one sort of pet archetype that I've given up on because I thought it was leading to too many negative games, which is Au revoir decks post rotation, especially with Rubicon Switch. I think it's very solid. So if you want to, make your friends miserable, you can tweak that more. But I've given up on that, and the other runner ID that I've really gravitated to is Sunny LeBeau. I just really enjoy Jack Sinclair, and I really enjoy Security Nexus, and she gets both of those influence free. So that is
the world's best mom. That's pretty great.
She's a pretty good mom.
It turns out once you've got about 10 turns of setup, she's pretty unbeatable.
Yeah, I think I'm a pretty good Sunny deck builder, and I think one of the exciting things with Sunny deck building is figuring out what her deck does well and what her deck doesn't do well, and playing towards that information. If you know that, and building towards that information. If you know that the early game is a weakness for you, maybe that's where you should be spending your influence, and that's where you should be, how you should be evaluating your early hands, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So, let's talk about what do we think. What is the idea of a pet ID? Like, what does pet ID mean, right?
Yeah. So I think to me, there's a few IDs that I will gravitate towards just because I like them, because they're familiar, and I guess that's what a pet ID means to me. I play a lot.
Every time a new data pack comes out, I immediately look at all the runner cards and say, does this help Adam? And to me, that is a defining factor of that is my pet ID. That's my first thought. It's like, I don't even start identifying, okay, what new archetypes can be in this data pack. It's what card helps Adam.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because that is one of the initial reasons I think that helped me stop playing Smoke, is nothing fits into Smoke, because that deck is so incredibly tight, and all of the tools, like I found when new cards were coming out, like RNG key and things, and I was trying to slot them into Smoke, I was taking out incredibly powerful cards to make room for these cards. You know what I'm saying? So because of the way I like to build, once I realized that I couldn't really fit any of these new cards into Smoke without making the deck demonstratively worse, I realized that I needed to move on. And then once I kind of set myself free from Smoke, who I had that same mindset for a long time, I was able to actually, play things that are good for the meta, or design new decks that are good for the meta instead of trying to adjust my Smoke. So I started winning and doing better at tournaments.
Yeah, I think... Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it's interesting to think about, because it's not like I've ever done terrible with her. But it's the difference between, like, building out a Honda Civic to be a race car, or starting with a car that has all the parts that you want inside of it. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think one thing, the point of this discussion is not how to pick the best pet ID. Though I think one of the things that appeals to me so much about the IDs that I do like, and I do gravitate to, is that they're flexible. Because one of the things I do like about having a pet ID is it does make new pack day exciting, and it makes it easy to engage in the card pool. And it being easy is not the same thing as it being good for your competitive aspirations. But it is nice when you say a new pack comes out, there's a card in it, and you are familiar with how to work your pet ID, and you say, okay, good, I'm excited about this card. I know a place that I can put it. And it's a low. it's a low mental overhead way of playing, and that can be kind of nice.
No, I agree 100%. But what I was more referring to, which was something that was kind of the seed that led to me trying to come up with this topic, was that not all pet IDs are created alike. Because if your pet ID is somebody, like, just take a friend of the show and guest Stephen Ball, his pet ID is Max. But you can put anything into Max, right?
Yeah.
If you have a pet ID that's something like an Adam, who's who still is more flexible than probably Smoke. But if you have somebody like Smoke, the deck is very specific.
Right.
So it limits your ability to integrate new cards and adapt to the meta. Whereas if you're willing to play whatever identity and willing to experiment, or if your pet ID is something like Val or Max or even something like Steve Cambridge, there's a lot more flexibility in what you can do. And so it's maybe holding you back a little bit less. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one thing that's interesting with pet IDs is that I think, having a non-competitive reason that you keep coming back to an ID is going to inherently hurt your competitive aspirations. But one thing that is interesting that happened, as you two were talking about, comparing, say, Smoke and Adam. Worlds 2017 was really exciting if you were excited about Smoke or you were friends with somebody who was excited about Smoke. In that the meta really came close to being a really strong Smoke meta. And I think CI combo just was too big for Smoke to really be the ID. You did very well with Smoke at Worlds, though I don't think Smoke was the ID. You know what I mean?
No, I scrapped hard for a lot of my wins. Much harder than I think I would have if I had been playing Haley.
Well, also, do you think it was that Smoke wasn't quite there, or was the prevalence of Potential Unleashed and the other Jinteki net damage that Haley just has a much easier time with than Smoke?
What? We're not going to get too much into that.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Thank you.
But it was a combination of a lot of things, right? Like, just to kind of very briefly go over it, there was a mixed Tag Storm plus net damage meta. Smoke is okay against tags, but with net damage, Smoke cannot afford to lose any card, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think what happened with Adam, at least this Storch season, is that the meta shifted to a place where Adam was a good choice, and Thomas had put in all this time with Adam already, and so when the meta rolled around to be Adam time, you were ready.
Yeah, he was ready to go.
Yeah,
I do find it entertaining that my Adam still ended up very different than what a lot of the other Adams were, but that's okay.
Yeah.
I still enjoy it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, if I picked up your Adam deck, I would not have done as well as you did, because you had put in the time, and you had put in the deck building time, so that when here's a card that says every time you run R&D or HQ, you get $3 or 2 cards if you want. Well, I guess mainly just R&D.
It works in HQ.
It works pretty well with HQ. Yeah, so that's an interesting positive of pet IDs, that you can be rewarded.
Yeah,
you can. Yes, and so I think I don't think there will ever be a time when we don't have our pet IDs. Mm-hmm. I do think it is something we need to be willing to step away from. I know I've personally had a lot of problems stepping away from Adam, not just because I don't want to, but because I literally struggle to understand how some other decks work.
Right.
I tried to pick up Dan's Max deck one day, and I took my first 5 and I looked at it and I said, I have no idea if this is something I want to keep or not, because every card's good in Max. So it's like figuring out what the cards you're looking for is an entirely different equation than what I'm used to in Adam. I'm looking for cards that, will this hand let me get down to 2 cards in hand and have been productive?
Right.
So.
Right. I think that's fair. Yeah, go ahead, Sanjay.
Well, so this is that made me think of something that is a little bit sideways of competitive success, but certainly in terms of my goals with Netrunner, chiefly are to be happy and fulfilled and enjoy the game. And I think one of the ways I enjoy the game most is getting cards I like. And one of the things that about having a sort of narrow view of if you're only seeing cards through the lens of your pet ID, you sometimes miss cards that you would really enjoy, but and like I was saying, Tenon I think is pretty versatile, but one of the things that Tenon doesn't do well is if you have a strategy that involves having a lot of undefended remotes, you might as well not bother. You might as well be someone else. And so, some cool asset that isn't really worth protecting with a bunch of ice comes out, and I'm just like, no, who cares? I don't want that, even if it's something that I really enjoy. So I think I really like what you were saying about how having a pet ID can narrow your focus on what cards do more than it should.
Yeah. And going back to what we had said before about, seeing the cards that are coming out through the lens of the ID that you're playing most, right?
Mm-hmm.
The final death knell, because I had been off of Smoke as my primary ID for a while, but somebody had suggested Takobi to me, and I tried to get it into the deck, and I was changing my console and putting the garbage card that is Blackstone into my deck to try to get value out of Takobi, and I was just like, what am I doing here? I'm adding slots, multiple slots, and making my work worse in every possible way to fit a new card into a deck that's already basically polished to a fine shine.
Yep.
Right.
I love that card, and I would play it all the time if it was 2 influence or 1, but at 3 I struggle to fit it. So maybe I should be playing Shaper.
Yeah, some factions get it for no influence.
So I hear there's some good decks there.
Yeah. The other big thing is they keep taking Smoke's money away. Every time Smoke gets a good blue money card that shores up her late game economy, they decide that Shapers can't have it. But yeah. So
except Shaper has the best economy in the click take two.
If we're back to Magnum Opus being the best economy, how far we've come.
I know.
So let's talk a little bit about how has your relationship with let's try to have a moment of introspection and be objective. How has your relationship with the pet ID, so Tenon, Adam, and Smoke, affected you achieving your Netrunner goals, let's just say, in the past year? Who wants to go first?
I can go on the roller coaster. So I've been rewarded for it at the beginning of this year, but I took it to Worlds as a very fringe choice, and I took a very fringe deck, and I was punished for it. You
said French for a second. I was like,
yes. I'm sorry, that's terrible French, but very fringe, and I was punished at Worlds for it because in the dream world of I only saw CI, I would have been quite happy, but I was the only one that didn't. So I really struggled with it, and I think I've been rewarded for keeping with it, obviously, through having success with it. But right now, getting ready for King of Subways, not King of Servers, King of Subways, I've had a real crisis with he's not as good as he was, and I think I've identified that's because of the court meta more than anything going wrong with Adam. Nothing's really changed. It's just the decks that were good earlier this year are not good against the current meta. Not as good. They're not as bad as some of the other times Adam's been bad. But there's still not a time for always be running Adam. You can't be as aggressive early as you want to be right now, and you're not rewarded for it because of the agenda suites and for the love of punitive and hard-hitting news that's out right now.
Yeah, I think another big part of that, just to go over two specific things that you and I have discussed in our King of Subways practice, the fact that corp agenda density has dropped in the last few months as new packs have come out and cards like Degree Mill and SSL have come out. You're less likely to get those early strikes that Adam depends on. And also, economic warfare and hard-hitting news is a devastating combo early game against Adam because you can no longer save yourself by being like 2 credits above the corp money.
Yeah, you have to be significantly richer than the corp, and it turns out corps are rich when they are playing more economy cards because they have more slots for them.
Yep. Sanjay, you want to go next?
Yeah, it's a tough question because as you know, I don't have a lot of competitive success very often, though, and I think to some extent for me, in my specific situation, having pet IDs actually makes me better in that I flit around from deck idea to deck idea very rapidly. I'm like a little butterfly. And I think pet IDs sort of center me in a way that if I come to a store championship with a deck that I've barely played, at least I've played something sort of like it a lot of times because I love the idea it's coming out of so much. I don't think I'm being a great role model here as far as good, as far as being good competitively. But I think my issues lie elsewhere. If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely, it does. Hopefully, I just fixed the audio. Apparently, I'm much softer than the two of you.
Oh, I'm just screaming.
It's okay. I adjusted the levels, so we should be in better shape. But anyway, so, it's a mixed bag. I don't think it's unfair to say that despite my absence of large-scale competitive success, I think I play Netrunner probably more than anyone in our group of friends.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds fair.
So I'm looking at my little copy board where I copy. I have a total of 322 games on Smoke that I've recorded on Jinteki.net.
Nice.
So, but she got me one of my Smoke mats, and she got me a 5-1 or 6-1, whatever, however many rounds of Swiss we played at Worlds.
Yep.
And she's always done pretty well for me. That having been said, me refining my desire to experiment and moving away from her so that I could do other things, and another like really cool jank identity in the form of Cabanessa Wu coming out made it so that I was willing to try things and find decks that are actually like good. Good's not the right word. Strong and resilient. Because Smoke is very strong if things go her way early on. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I really think, if I'm being completely honest, of the 2 pet identities I've had on Runner during the course of this game's existence, I think Smoke is less flexible than Noise was. There's many different types of decks you can put into the Noise shell, and Smoke, you don't really have that, so it was kind of limiting. Also, I did find when I started moving off of Smoke, I had this issue where I was in the Smoke mindset, and I often didn't run when I should have, and I didn't force ice reses when I should have, because I was worried about losing cards. Like, Smoke caused me to play a lot more carefully than I probably should have been. So breaking myself of that was also really important, like especially now that I'm playing Max. And I'm just like, whatever, I'll run it, see what happens. There's a same old thing on the board. If I lose Levy, it'll be fine. Like...
Yeah.
I don't know if there was a coherent thought in there.
No, you definitely get into that where you play the same style of deck for too long. You start to have issues with being able to play other styles because you just can't even conceptualize the mindset. And I know when I came off of always be running Atom, it took me several weeks to not run first click every turn. And I'm like, I don't have to do this anymore, but it's still like, it's my default mindset. It's like, okay, I want to be pressuring as much as possible. So
one thing that, in terms of, I'm just thinking back to previous NetrunnerQuest episodes. I think it might have been Dan D'Eugenio who was talking to you about having, multiple archetypes that you're adept with at a time. And
he also told me to stop playing Adam.
Yeah.
And he wanted me to play Andromeda. That's how long ago this was.
Oh, yeah. Did you do that? You did. You took
I played Andromeda for a while. It was nice having 9 cards instead of 3.
Well, I was a fan of the show, and so anytime I would interact with any of you, I would know whether you're doing your homework or not.
Yeah.
And I mentally gave you an A+ in terms of doing your homework, and I think I probably flunked Dan. I don't think he took that advice to heart.
No. Well, I would say that I have now. Because now I'm much more adept with multiple runners and multiple corps at a time, which has helped. Like the first mat I won, the one where I came in 3rd behind Thomas at the store championship, I was playing a Magnum Opus Max because a lot of people were on scarcity at that time for resource hate. And then one of the other ones where I came in 2nd behind Jonas, I was playing a modified Lock Haley with Find the Truth and RNG Key for permanent economy without having to use Levy. Stuff like that. So being adept with multiple runner archetypes, I've always played a lot of corpse, but being adept with multiple runner archetypes is something that I've only very recently gotten into, and it's done wonders for me being better at this game competitively.
Yeah, and if we're allowing this narrative that Thomas was a dedicated Atom player and the meta moved to him, and he got to reap the benefits of that, the more IDs you're dedicated to, the more you have double the chances of that happening.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's kind of cool.
But yeah.
I suppose the other thing that you're talking about in terms of how your ID changes your the way you play. I know one of the earliest ways in which picking up an ID actually helped me is that Gabe just really changes the way you approach the corp. And I was a very cautious runner, and picking up Gabe made me better at the game. I don't know if that might be a little bit out of scope of what we're talking about, but
yeah. So I think one of the things that's kind of interesting to think about in the context of this game is not just that, obviously people in any card game or any strategic game is going to have maybe a faction or a type of strategy that they gravitate towards. But I think the complexity of Netrunner lends itself to the shortcut of people saying, this is my person. Like, this is what I play, because it makes it so your thought process around the game can be more focused around this one strategy, right? And I think that can be a pitfall that certain new players or middleweight players fall into. And if your goal is, obviously we're kind of 3 fringe cases here. That's why hopefully we'll get Laura and Kevin in here later, because we are people who are more committed to having fun with our dumb garbage than we are to actually like having serious competitive success. We want those things. We want those things.
I think we're more successful at deluding ourselves that we can have competitive success with these more.
Maybe we shouldn't speak for Sanjay. That might just be you and I.
No, I mean I want to crush it.
No,
you did crush it. Your Ayla deck like demolished Colorado regionals last year.
That was horrible.
That was so great. I was doing Bane quotes in the chat for that stream. I was just like, you guys think that you have a meat damage meta. He was born in one. He didn't even see a Plascrete until he was already a man. You were taking them apart.
I don't think I was on Plascrete in that deck. Just never.
No, but I was just making a joke.
Going back real quick to, like, I do think it's easy. Like you were saying, like people identify, like because of the way Netrunner is, people identify, and I think it's kind of telling that we generally identify with runners, these individuals. Sanjay being an exception, but
speak for yourself. Wayland for life.
You okay? Mr. Spinoza, do you identify with the scummiest of runners?
I do.
Are your favorite runners Noise and Smoke? They're trash.
They're trash.
The
bins.
Trash humans of Netrunner.
Yeah, they're the swag runners.
So it's like you can build this little mental lore about what's happening.
Yeah, and I'm gonna have a new trash bin very soon.
Yeah.
And I think. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I'm just saying, if you're in that mindset, like I know I am, I believe Sanjay is, I'm pretty sure Dan is. It makes it easier to have this kind of pet ID, and that's why having Laura and Kevin, sorry, you guys couldn't make it, is very interesting because, like, we think Laura had a pet ID, but she was just saying like, "Oh, I just didn't realize something was better. I thought you all were wrong, and Quetzal was amazing."
I mean, every Quetzal made day 2 in the year she brought Quetzal to World. So
yeah.
So I would push back a little bit about this being just a concern for people who are really competitively minded, because I do think one of the things that because doing really well competitively is not my main focus, but I do think that focusing myself can help me achieve my goals better than I'm doing right now, and I think that gives me a place here. And I think that getting sunk on one ID can get in the way of any goal that you have, unless your goal is specifically to show that ID is good and build a really, if your goal is I must build a really good Sunny deck, then yeah, you have to be playing Sunny. But if your goal is I want to build a janky weird deck, I want to play with these cards I like, you might find that you're going to have more fun, more success, regardless of what your goal is, if you're more flexible and you're not caged to a certain identity. And I think it's easy to get caged to a certain identity because while there's benefits to it being easy, there's also downsides of it being easy. Is that fair?
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I mean, I think it ultimately really just comes down to, I don't know. It's tough. It's kind of tough for me to say.
So I think, shall we double back and see if there's some good viewer questions to talk to? I think we've talked to some of them.
Yeah, I know we've got one. We had a good question. Where is it? From Kayak R17. That makes me wonder, do you think there's an argument to be made that having a pet ID can get you into a rut because you're used to looking at the game in a certain way? I think definitely that is the case because all the Netrunner archetypes, right? Because we have hidden information and because unlike Magic the Gathering or Hearthstone or any other game where your currency, your resources are renewable, Netrunner, since you build an economy engine for your deck, there's a thought process, there is a end state mentality that you're driving towards that can be similar from deck to deck, But if you look at something like stealth as opposed to max, as opposed to on the corpse side being Stinson based or asset based, these are completely different mindsets of how you evaluate what you're playing, how you evaluate how do you use your clicks. So that's going to shape how you think about the game.
Yep.
Yeah, that sounds right.
You can definitely get into a rut that way. I think one of the most interesting things that I've recently discovered just from our testing over the last couple weeks is I've been on like a hot streak for the last few months with like being able to actually get stints into fire. But runners are really rich right now. So unless I'm also playing the economic warfare, I've had to pull. Unless I also have the slots for the economic warfare, I've had to pull it because I'm not firing it. But I got into this rut. I'm like, well, if I need extra money cards, I'll play Stinson. But Stinson's not guaranteed economy.
Yeah, you kind of have to be on like the reversed accounts plan and be sure that you're going to get it.
Right.
Or play against people that don't know that they need to be rich. And I love playing with those people. I love exposing the game to them. But they're not the kind of people... this is sounding terrible. They're not the kind of people that we're going to see in the cut at a tournament, at regionals or something like that. I wish we would. I wish New Blood could make the cut. Listen to our podcast, and maybe you will.
We have a question from Gingerkin. It says, I've noticed all your playstyles are skewed towards your pet ID, and that leads to interesting lines of play that you discuss with one another. Does that help you as a player to have those views? Do you think... what do you think? Do you think your playstyle is affected by your ID, or do you think it's the other way around, that you pick IDs that suit your playstyle, or do you think it's a little both ways?
For me, it's purely thematic. Smoke is such a divergence from Noise, right? But it's just because I love the fluff and the feel of somebody who like for me, the attraction to Smoke and Noise were both purely fluff based, which I know makes me kind of somewhat of an outlier in this game, because they were both people who are like, I'm famous and I'm a runner and you can't catch me, right?
Yeah.
Or you know exactly what I am and where I'm at and you can't do anything about it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love the theming on Smoke, but why did they make Daily Cast Runner the stealth runner? I don't get it. Don't get it. Anyway, that's not on topic. Sorry.
Just, you're upset about theme. We understand.
Look, that why is Netmerker a stealth card?
I mean, I guess the idea is if she's like broadcasting, it's like covering her tracks, because if she's broadcasting on every system, then it's harder to find her.
People are probably donating bitcoins, like on her show. She's like, "Hey, drop some bitcoins on."
Yeah, maybe that is what the stuff is.
Yeah,
it's your boy Smoke. Hit me up with that Twitch subscription.
If you want to see me break this ice wall, send me some monies.
Yeah, if we hit tonight's donation goal, I'll break into HBHQ.
Yeah. So the question is, does having friends with pet IDs help you look at the game differently? I think that's actually really exciting, because it is fun to look at a pack and you look at a card and you say, oh, well, this is going to make my friend happy. Or sometimes you'll look at a pack and say, oh no, this is going to make my friend happy because I play against them most of the time. I'm going to be miserable face checking this.
Yeah, that'll happen sometimes.
All right, so do we have homework? One of the things from previous episodes, we've sort of given homework sort of themed around the lesson of the show. I know that I personally will not be taking Tenon to King of Subways probably, and deliberately branching out. So I'm probably doing the homework already. One thing about King of Subways is it kind of pushes you towards leaning into your pet IDs.
Yeah.
Because it's like, hey, we have to have somebody on either a mini faction or criminal or something. You really like Adam. you should play Adam. So maybe we're leading up to a competitive event that doesn't lend itself to applying our lessons very well. What do you think, Dan?
I don't know. I think it's tough to say because I think all of our pet IDs are bad right now. So it's not really much of a stretch that we would. Well, they're not. Okay.
I know.
I'm being hyperbolic. Tenon's not terribly well suited in the meta.
He just got a spider.
Yeah, they did get a spider, but like Amaku is everywhere. People are cheating their way around a lot of different ice.
Yeah, it's so rude.
Adam is not well suited right now. Smoke is not well suited right now with there being a mix of net damage and other things. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I think if we just say, well, our homework is that we're not going to play our pet IDs. I don't think any of us are. I think that's already our plan. So I think if we're going to give ourselves some hard homework as far as pet ID kind of stuff, I think it would be better for us to say that we're going to play winning decks from Netrunner DB that are outside of our normal wheelhouse of what we would normally play or wherever our comfort zone is. And kind of basically say that we're going to try to get outside of whatever our thought process is and dive into the success that other people have had and try to view the game through those lenses.
Yep.
For my part, thinking about this, I started playing Scorpios this morning for a day job, and I'm going to continue playing that because I haven't really played that identity at all. And, Chris Dyer and a handful of other very top players just like ravaged tournaments with it. So there's something there, but it's completely outside of the style of the way that I normally like to play Wayland.
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
That, right?
Huh?
Well,
yeah, I sorry, go ahead, Sanjay.
Oh, well, I think I personally might have trouble implementing that homework exactly just insofar as I don't want to go to a tournament without a deck that I've built myself. Should probably sleeve up some decks that look fun and play them online a bit. That does sound fun, but
no, I don't mean necessarily bring them to like King of Subways.
Yeah.
Sanjay, like this is something I honestly don't know about you. I don't think you play other people's decks as a rule, do you? I've never really seen you play decks that I don't feel were yours.
Not usually, and I think it's a real, and I think it's a really bad habit. I should like. I think it makes you a better player, and I enjoy it a lot when I do. I do sometimes.
Sorry, the one like caveat or the for instance I can come up with is when we were on the same cache refresh deck.
Oh yeah, that's great. I think I have, and it's wonderful. I sleeved up somebody's cool Architects of Tomorrow Glacier deck, and it was just a delight. What else have I sleeved up? Yeah, no, it's not my habit, but it is fun, and so I should do it more.
Yeah,
it's just like I also like to make my own decks. So it's hard to get like I'm trying. I hate that I'm going to do this, but after King of Subways, I just intend to go and play the best decks from Anarch and from Shaper and from everywhere else.
Before the tournament, you should play the best decks before and during the tournament. I'm giving you a hard time, but no, like I want to unpack that. So you're admitting that there is power out there that you're gonna dive into, you're gonna explore. Why wouldn't you do that as part of the prep for the tournament, even if you don't end up playing those decks?
Right now, it is not my style to be able to do that. So if you want, we can talk about me changing runners, but we need to do it now so that I can get myself in that runner's mindset. I do not have the flexible play style to be able to bounce around, and then the week of the tournament, which is, next week, say, this is the runner I'm going to play, and show up and play it at any level that would be acceptable to me.
And I'm not expecting you to.
Yeah.
But, I think that's something we need to discuss. I think a case can be made for you to still obviously play Adam. Adam isn't terrible by any stretch. But I think that is something that we need to evaluate, because what I'm concerned about is when you show up with the wrong Adam deck, you have a very bad time. And I don't just mean from a round performance.
Yeah.
You don't have fun. And the whole point of us doing this team tournament is that you're going to come with us and have fun. I think the real big thing that we should focus on is leaving our comfort zones as far as what we're playing, and mixing into our repertoire to try to kind of like expand our mindsets. Because I know something that I tried doing recently is doing like all the origami combo stuff, which is something I've never really delved into. I've never played those styles of decks, right? And but that was a lot of fun and taught me a lot about like the combo mindset and mapping out how many turns it takes for you to be able to fire a combo and things like that, And those are important mindsets to understand, because now when I play that type of against that type of Wu deck on the corpse side, I know how many turns I have based on how quickly they're setting up before I lose. Right?
Yeah. All right. So, so I think what our homework is to, at the very least, jam some games with IDs and strategies that you identify as being outside your comfort zone.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yeah. So
and I think what you're saying, Thomas, about when you want to time this, this exploration into some other strategies. If you want to do it after King of Subways, it makes sense. And you and your teammates can talk about that a little bit more. But what makes the most sense. I don't know what IDs y'all are on. So you might really need an Adam. You might have a lot of flexibility. I think that's pretty well defined, and we can either succeed or fail at our homework.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna try and play Wishbone.
The dog?
Yeah. No, the Asmari deck that won.
Yeah. Which is named after the dog, isn't it?
Yes. Because it's educational and has dogs in it.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Team Doggo.
And Canadian. Wishbone is a Canadian production. It's a really good name.
Multiple levels.
So what are we doing? So when is the next episode? Are we gonna aim for
2 weeks from now?
2 weeks from now.
So it'll be after King of Servers.
Yeah.
So the 24th.
Yeah, that sounds good.
We'll try to swap some other people in and maybe schedule a guest. We'll see how it goes, and we'll do even more in-depth discussion. But I really think, just kind of like cap on this, I think one of the most important things to get out of this episode that we've done is not necessarily that having a pet ID is bad or good. I think that one of the most important things to keep in mind when you get really excited about a specific identity or archetype in this game for a long period of time is being able to take that step back and maybe even talk to like your metamates or your friends and be able to kind of objectively look at whether or not your focus on this archetype or identity is hindering or helping you. Right? Are you reaping rewards from that focus, or is that focus keeping you from the success or whatever kind of play outcomes you're looking for? Right? Because sometimes what I found, and I'm going to leave with this, is I was playing Smoke because I was the Smoke guy, but I wasn't having fun anymore. Yeah. And when you're not having fun anymore, but you're playing an identity out of like some sense of duty, then you're not winning and you're not having fun. So then what are you doing?
I like it.
Do you guys have any final thoughts?
No, I'm very happy to be here. I'm really excited for Kevin to be joining us because he wrote a really great article on that is at least on stimhack.com about deliberate practice. I think it's on medium.com too. So if you go on stimhack.com and look for his article, it's worth a read. And I think that might be a topic for 2 weeks from now. It'll depend on if we get a guest or something like that. But also, if you can get to New York in 2 weekends from now, come to King of Subways. It should be really fun. If you don't have a team, you should register really soon so that they can pair you up with other people who don't have teams. But I would love to see you there if you can make it.
It is fun having a complete stranger on your team, as we learned at
Oh yeah.
Worlds.
Oh yeah, we
had our own D'Artagnan. We had our fourth
he was
amigo.
wonderful.
Bubba the Goat.
Bubba the Goat.
Right.
Yeah, great teammate.
Yeah.
Recommend him highly.
Yes.
But yeah, everyone, thank you very much for coming to hang out with us. Probably in a day or two, I should have the audio ripped for this and uploaded to the podcast format. And until we see all of you fine Netrunner humans again, always be running.
Bye.